faith-based book, Lord of the Rings. We got to get to it because that is, obviously written
Absolutely.
by J.R.R. Tolkien. He was a staunch Catholic, and
Mhm.
he, I guess, conveyed a lot of his beliefs. Not, I guess, he definitely conveyed a lot of his beliefs into his writing. So it's kind of a good, sort of a segue to get to this topic about the logistics of Lord of the Rings. And we were
Absolutely.
going back and forth on LinkedIn about our favorite sort of transportation options about Lord of the Rings. And I'm going to bring up a couple of my favorite. This first one is how long did Frodo and Sam walk, which is insane to think about because they took this map, these creators, they took this map and they overlaid how long Sam and Frodo, which are two hobbits from the show, and they walked from the Shire over to Mordor. And if you're looking at the screen right now, what I think is hilarious about this map is that Mordor is actually in my neck of the woods in Jacksonville, Florida. So
Are
I
you
don't know what that
surprised
says
by
about
that?
me. I did not design this, by the way. This image has been floating around the internet for quite some time, and I just think it's kind of funny that Mordor is actually in the state of Florida. I don't, I guess read into that of what you will, but couple little logistics facts from that. It took about 13 months, 1,500 miles, and 8 miles a day on foot. But then, there was another commenter on this thread. We found this on Reddit, and they said, well, actually, they pushed up their glasses as they were saying this, that they were in Rivendell and Lothlorien for about 2 months. So in reality, Sam and Frodo averaged about 14 or 15 miles per day with their travel. So it likely took a little bit of a shorter time versus, some of these other modes of transportation. And speaking of other modes of transportation, tell me why this common argument that people make about Lord of the Rings of why just Sam and Frodo couldn't even use the eagles to fly to Mordor.
That's a great question, and it's been debated, hotly debated for very long decades, probably. A couple things. There is an aura of fear that surrounds the Drakes and the Nazgul, and it's hard to say whether the Eagles would have been immune to that aura of fear. The other thing is Sauron and the Tower at Barad-dûr. They're able to sense a lot of stuff, including in some cases, where that ring is. So keep in mind, Sauron is always watching those eagles. Those are enemies from a long time ago, thousands of years. They know about that. If they saw a bunch of birds flying in to their capital city, they're going to blast them out of the sky. It's just not going to work. Now, there's people say, well, when Gandalf was falling down after defeating or about to battle the Balrog in Moria, that maybe, or Durin's Bane, that when he said, fly, you fools, you fly with the eagles, that's the solution. That's probably not true either. So I do think the eagles have a really good case to be made about being very effective, but I will use the same idea of Glorfindel. So there's a whole story. People say, why didn't Glorfindel, who is this incredibly powerful reincarnated elf who saw the original trees of Valinor, like, that's a big deal. Why didn't he go to freaking Mordor? Well, because Sauron can see his aura. This is a secret mission. This is a clandestine adventure. This is not trying to make it all excited and flashy. This is hiding and stealth. So I think the same reason why Glorfindel's not going on that journey is the same reason you're not using eagles to go to Mordor.
And it's also the reason why the hobbits were chosen in order to sneak into Mordor, because they have those sneaky skills. And also the eagles are their own species. You can't just command them at will. They have their own sort of governance and their own, I guess, board of directors that make these decisions on what conflicts they're going to get involved in and what conflicts they're not.
They're neutral, exactly. The reason why they helped Gandalf was because Gandalf was friends with the king of them. He's like, hey, I'm on the top of Isengard. Can you give me a hand? Like, yeah, sure, I'll send someone over. We'll pick you up.
Now, speaking of, I guess the animal realm of Lord of the Rings, there's a couple other ones that I wanted to sort of shout out. Bill the Pony, he's one of my favorites, as far as, Sam, that's who he rode for the majority of the time before they got to, what was the doors of not Minas Tirith. Help me out here, Matthew. Where did they get to? Is the dwarves and Moria? Moria, that's where it is.
Oh my! Well,
so he says goodbye.
Yeah, Moria.
So it's in Moria where he says goodbye to Bill the Pony. And we, of course, cannot mention, horses without mentioning Shadowfax. He is the Lord of all horses. And that was the one that Gandalf rode during the movie series. You can kind of see an image of him on the screen right now. Another fun note that I wanted to bring up is Viggo Mortensen. His horse that he rode throughout the movie, he ended up, after the movie was done being shot, he actually adopted his horse and took him home to his own, I guess, sort of ranch area. And then he also bought the stunt double's horse for his stunt
Nice.
double. And so they were able to sort of retire with the rest of the or some of the Lord of the Rings cast.
One of the
Now,
great
there's
things
another
about
one.
Shadowfax is Shadowfax is
Oh, no, go
immune to the
ahead, please.
fear of the Nazgul. So Shadowfax, what makes Shadowfax so cool is that Shadowfax is not terrified by a bunch of Nazgul on top of a Drake. They're not scared of that. That is amazing. And then back to our good buddy Bill the Pony. Gandalf actually told him words of these were guarding and guiding words. So Bill the Pony survives. He gets back. He gets back. So it's incredible that like you get to see these wonderful animals. I'm a big fan. I heard Vigo broke his toe. Did you hear about that?
Oh, Jesus. That is sort of like the Lord of the Rings, like the meme. Every time it comes up on a movie, you're the first one to sort of shout it out to anybody who is in ears distance of you, that you know that little fact of
We're a
when he
good
picks
team,
the
Blythe. We're a
helmet, he
very
actually
good
breaks
team.
his toe. But then he breaks his toe, and the scream that he lets out, it's a real scream because he actually broke his toe, for the people
Right.
who may not know that if you've been living under a rock. Now, a couple more that I wanted to give a shout out to is sailing into the West. That's another mode of transportation within Lord of the Rings. Sailing into the West is sailing into the undying lands, I believe, of Valinor. And so that's sort of at the end of Return of the King, where you see all of the, Gandalf and Sam, and I think Shadowfax was on that ship as well. And so they were able to sail off into the West, being ring bearers for all of them. While you can see in this little image, the three little hobbits that are left behind, which includes Sari, Mary, and Pip. Not Sammy, but Sam, Mary, and Pip. And so for the next one, I think you had a few ideas for some of
Well,
your
let's just
favorites as
talk
far
about
as.
Valinor for a second before we get to the next one. So I want to talk about
Please.
Valinor just for a moment. So we have this new series coming out on Amazon. It's about the Second Age. Second Age is interesting. When you had the Undying Lands of Valinor, you used to be able to go there. You could just go. It was in the West. There was a kingdom called Numenor. We're going to learn all about Numenor. And in Numenor, I don't want to spoil things, but they do things that are a little bit different. And they receive a punishment of sorts. And the Earth, or Middle Earth, which was a flat thing, becomes a sphere. And we're going to learn a lot of stuff. So I'm just going to put a little flag there. People, watch for Valinor and watch for Numenor.
I think for people, especially Lord of the Rings fans, they've been waiting a long time to see some of those locations from the Second Age come to life. So my hope is that Amazon does that part of it justice, that they respect the lore when it comes to, places like Numenor and Valinor and all that sort of legendarium that I think a lot of fans are really anxious to see. Now, you had a couple of them that we'll get to them pretty quickly. You said, are the orcs employees or independent contractors? Kind of going back to our earlier discussion on the legal issues of freight. What about the legal issues in Middle Earth?
I think that they've been misclassified. I suspect they're called contractors and they're paid through a series of snacks. But ultimately, these are employees. They deserve benefits. If you want to have a loyal army of orcs, you have to have good care for your veterans. I don't think they did. So in my opinion, my legal opinion is that these orcs were actually employees. They were part of the military and they were taken advantage of. And that's why they're on the side of the dark side. They are.
And they eventually they put meat back on the table, boys. And so with the next one, can we integrate the Palantir with Project 44? Explain to people what the Palantir is.
So you have these things. So first of all, who made these things? Feanor did. Like, okay, everybody, when you're done with this conversation with me and Blythe, go look up Feanor. That is, Feanor is awesome. Great craftsman. The Palantir were a way to communicate between the different leadership teams all across Middle Earth. And so you'd stare into them and you could talk to people. This was before they had telephones and fax machines. You had this simple Palantir. And this is a technology that helped corrupt Denethor because he didn't realize that Sauron had one. But anyway, we're getting ahead of ourselves. I think Project 44 is a great technology platform that can connect different systems together. And I think more likely than not, the Palantir are a great way for them to get into Middle Earth, get into the moving and shaking of this really interesting place. We're in the fourth age or fifth age now, so presumably they're able to do that integration. I would also say that ring that they had, the One Ring, probably had some form of telematics on it. It was probably giving some positional data to somebody. So this is really important questions we have to address with supply chain and Lord of the Rings.
1000%. Because if you think about Saruman and how he was building, I don't even, I'm not going to mispronounce it, but I think, or Isengard. So he was building up Isengard in order to create all of his orcs, and the logistics around that, I think, is fascinating. Kind of deserves its own topic. Maybe we'll explore that in the future. But there's a lot of logistics going on. There's a lot of manufacturing going on, especially when it comes to the orcs themselves. And now you already did your Lord of the Rings speech, or did you have another one prepped for us?
That was the main one. I want to start off with that. We had talked for the audience watching. I asked Blythe, like, can I just read something from the book? And she's like, of course. I'm like, oh, we are copacetic. We are on the same page. We are a very good team here. I'm very excited about this opportunity to collaborate.
1000%. And so, a final question for all of the nerds out there. We are being gifted with a plethora of content that's coming up in the next few weeks. We have House of Dragon, Game of Thrones that comes out this Sunday. We have Rings of Power, Lord of the Rings, that's coming out in just a couple weeks. I believe it's September 2nd. It's at Labor Day weekend. But that's coming out on that Friday of Labor Day weekend, I believe. Then we also have Andor, which is a new Star Wars show that looks really good. It's not a show that a lot of people asked for, but it looks like it's going to actually be really good. We also have She-Hulk. We have a couple other shows that are all releasing within sort of a few weeks of each other. So which one are you the most excited about?
One ring to rule them all, one ring to find them, one ring to bring them all, and in the darkness bind them. Rings of Power is going to be amazing for a couple reasons. One, we get to meet Celebrimbor, who is the craftsman of these amazing rings, the ones for the elves, the ones for the dwarves, the ones for the humans. And he's a descendant of Feanor. I love Feanor. I'm excited for that. I am excited for She-Hulk. So the guy who played Matt Murdock in the Netflix Daredevil show, he's coming back. Many of our listeners or watchers have seen Harvey Birdman, Attorney at Law. If you haven't, Stephen Colbert was on that program. Amazing show. I'm hoping that She-Hulk becomes our version for this generation of Harvey Birdman. So those are my two I'm most excited about. I'll watch them all probably.
I was going to say, you're not a House of Dragon, Game of Thrones fan at all?
I am. Season 8 was so bad. Like, I have no faith in what this is going to be. I have no faith. They're going to build up some super bad villain and just erase them. It's just absurd. I'm sorry. I'm still really
I love it.
bitter.
I think that's the show that I like a little bit of disagreement, because I think that's going to be the show that's going to be tops out of all of these. I think Andor has a good chance to be second on my list, but I have very high expectations, almost too high expectations of Rings of Power. And I hate the way that they have portrayed Galadriel so far. That is my major sticking point, because she's one of my favorite characters of all time.
She's amazing. She's really powerful.
Her character is amazing, but not how Amazon is portraying her. I have major beef with how they're portraying her. Her hair looks raggedy all the time when her hair is supposed to be a resemblance of the two trees. I have a major qualms with turning her into a sword-wielding warrior princess. Can't stand it. But for the rest of the show, I'm definitely looking forward to it.
Would you think, and I don't know how people can communicate with us, maybe send me and Blythe messages on the different social media platforms that you know of us. I think there's a reaction thing we should be doing. We should be talking about like a recap of the last week. Like, here's what we saw, here's what we liked. I'll have a long list of things that I like, because I just love anything fantasy. But I think there's a path there. There's a program there that I know the audience, like, let's get more opinions of Leffler and Blythe talking about Lord of the Rings. Let's do
just
that.
Gonna be me yelling the entire time. What did they do to her?
It's an abomination.
Yes. That's been my reaction to a few different things. Every time I see her hair, it looks raggedy. So I'm hoping that they put some respect on her name.